start from the top here. Want to welcome everyone to tonight's ADU webinar. This has been a great turnout. Sorry, it's taken me some time here, but make sure you let us know in the chat where you're at. We're going to take a quick overview of all things ADU. I might have to go a little faster here for everyone's kind of time's sake. So, but please note we will be holding future webinars and taking a deeper dive into the topics discussed tonight. So stay tuned for that. During the webinar, if you have questions, please click the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen to submit. We will try and take a few of them on today's webinar, but if we are unable, we will be sure to reach out after the session is completed so we can get them answered. So with that said, let's get started. First, a little bit about us. The Boundless Tiny Home mission is simple. Keep family close and build it right. We do this by creating living spaces that are functional, stylish, and long-lasting while treating every customer like family. And we have fun doing it. So let's go over to tonight's agenda. First off, my name is Jed Riopel, and I'm the ADU consultant here at Boundless Tiny Homes. I am a native Wisconsinite. I did live on the East Coast for the past about 15 years, but I now live in West Madison for about the last 5. So you can't see my image right now due to some technical difficulties, but I'm a big Packer fan, and you'll see why that's kind of important later. So here's what we're going to go over on tonight's webinar. First, what is an ADU at a high level? What is an ADU? Why build an ADU? We'll take a look at some ADU solutions. We'll talk about how to make the numbers work. We'll discuss ADU laws in Madison and the surrounding areas. We're going to discuss our process a little bit. And we're also going to take a look at some next steps. So if everyone's ready, and I'm assuming you are with this delay, let's jump in. So what is an ADU, or accessory dwelling unit? First, by local codes, it is considered an accessory to the primary dwelling. It has its own unique address. This means it's separate, independent, and self-contained living space. ADUs contain essential residential amenities such as a kitchen, a bathroom, and a sleeping area. It's important to note, though, ADUs are not like mobile homes or RVs. An ADU is a permanent structure and a lasting improvement to your property. It's built to local codes and standards. It's connected to utilities and considered part of your real estate. So the benefit is that you can increase your home's value long-term while providing practical use today. So now with that, let's talk about a few different forms that ADUs come in. First type is a detached ADU. This is the most common, sometimes referred to a granny flat, maybe a backyard cottage or an in-law suite. A detached ADUs are great for a variety of uses, including multi-generational living, as they provide aging parents independence while living close to loved ones on the same property. It's a fantastic way for grandma to be able to spend time with the grandkids while still maintaining that much-needed independence. Detached ADU units are also fantastic for rental units, as they generate passive income without disrupting your lifestyle. Key points to consider. They are completely separate from the primary home, excuse me. They are the most private option, as they do not share walls with the primary dwelling. Fence and landscape options work to divide the yard and provide separate space for each unit on the property. So these can be their own space on the property, and everyone's got their own areas to live. The next type is an attached unit. Key points here: an attached unit is an extension or addition to your existing home. They share at least one wall with the primary dwelling, but it is still entirely separate living space. These are a great option when lot size is limited, and fencing options can also be used to make backyard split. So even if you're doing an attached unit, we can create its own space in the backyard. And the final type is a conversion. These are the least common, but these ADUs are typically used when there is simply no room on the lot for either a detached or an attached ADU. It is essentially a repurposing of an existing space. Think of it as a basement or garage or an attic space being repurposed into a living space. Important to note that it can be challenging, as the existing structure needs to be adequate for conversion. An example of this might be that you have to have a proper foundation to support and to have a air-conditioned living space above. The important thing to remember here is that there are many options to provide you with an ADU depending on your specific needs. So now that we have an idea of what ADUs are, let's take a moment to talk about how they can help you in your unique situation. Most of our clients fit into 3 main categories as far as their reasons for needing an ADU. many are family first, the desire for a loved one to age in place versus maybe having them live in a retired community. Or they potentially need more livable space on the property for things like a home office or maybe even a pool house or something like that. Or potentially for investment property to use as a rental, either for now or down the road. ADUs solve a variety of these housing needs. They also increase property value and create opportunities for future passive rental income. It is a win-win. Let's take a closer look at how ADUs can solve challenges related to aging in place. So we all love our parents and grandparents, and ADUs offer an opportunity to keep them closer to home while preserving their independence in the backyard. Many of us know how expensive assisted living can be. And while assisted living centers can provide much needed services, our loved ones also lack the support and care that only family can provide. While an ADU can reduce or eliminate costly assisted living expenses, sometimes often $10,000 a month or more, while at the same time creating this private space that feels like home surrounded by loved ones, not a facility surrounded by strangers. ADUs are also a great solution when added space is needed. So let's dive into that. So how can ADUs provide additional space? They can be for visiting family. They can be potentially for a home office or perhaps an office to conduct mental health services that require more privacy. Yoga studios have also been popular choices with a lot of our customers. So there's a lot of use case for just needing the extra room. The beauty is that they offer flexible square footage without needing to move into a larger home. They also provide long-term value. This space adapts as your needs change. So let's look at how these spaces can adapt and change with your lifestyle. So we like to think of an ADU as having its own lifestyle cycle. The same ADU can be used for a variety of uses over a period of time. It may start as a home for an elderly parent. It can then transition to a home office or be used as added space for guests. And finally become a passive income earning rental opportunity. The result is that an ADU has a life cycle of its own and will add value throughout every stage. So what about ADUs and how they can be used? But how about the financial part? Let's take a look at that. So ADUs offer a smart financial choice in a market with growing demand. So what about the rental opportunity? Rent in Madison is expensive. Average monthly costs are rising every year with costs well over $1,500 a month for one bed. The good news is that high quality ADU can be rented for a premium, and it does appeal to a wide variety of potential renters due to a variety of factors. Overall build quality. A quality ADU is built with craftsmanship that discerning renters will appreciate. Modern, efficient interiors. Renters expect to pay more for upgraded living spaces. And privacy. There's no shared walls that are found in apartments, which means happier and well-rested renters. So let's take a look at a real financial scenario with the help of a payment calculator from our website. You may be wondering, what do ADUs cost? A quality stick-built ADU can range anywhere from the low hundreds, upwards of $300K, depending on size, finishes, and customization. But think about it this way. If it's a rental, the income can offset or even cover the payment entirely. Or if it's for an elderly family member, you're avoiding the much higher cost of assisted living. But no matter what, you're building long-term value into your property. So let's talk some funding options. The great news is that you don't have to have cash up front. Many of our clients use either HELOC, so a home equity line of credit. This is where you can access your home's equity with a flexible line of credit, a great option if you have been in the current home long enough to have built some equity. Another option is a cash out refinance. You can replace your current mortgage with a larger loan using your current home equity. Renovation loans are also somewhat popular. A great option when financing for current homes with limited equity. So if you haven't been in your home long or you don't have a ton of equity, a renovation loan might be the solution for you. Alternate funding options. So personal loans, retirement funds, borrowing from family, etc. There's a number of ways you can finance these homes. We would also be happy to discuss on a further discovery call or make introductions to a few lending partners who can help. They've got some creative solutions, and we have some partners in the industry who have who have creative solutions for funding ADUs in particular. Many times banks don't know how to fund ADUs, so we sometimes have to do some education. We're happy to do that on your behalf. So I guess before we move on, I think this is a good place to take some questions. Are there any questions up to this point? Devin, maybe you could read a few off if you've got some questions coming in.
Sure, Jed. One question is about regarding the side limit in Madison, 1,000 square feet. Can you explain how that works for like a two-story unit, for example?
Yeah, so we'll touch on this a little bit later, but right now there is a size limit of 1,000 square feet for the footprint. Now that has been raised from 900. So my guess is that things are going to keep changing and evolving in the Madison area, and allow for potentially larger and larger units. But we can do 1,000 square feet per floor. So if you wanted to do a two-story unit, 2,000 square feet, obviously you're venturing away from tiny home, but we can do that for you. So the ADU regulation there is that it's 1,000 square feet for the actual footprint of the unit. That does not include the garage itself. A great question. Any others?
What about basements?
We
Can we do
can do
those?
basements. A basement is, obviously adds a little bit to the budget because we do need to do, because typically what we're doing is pouring this on a slab. But a basement is doable. You do need to kind of expand your budget a little bit more. It's not terrible. But the other thing to consider with the basement is that we do need to carve out space on the floor plan for the stairwell going down. So on a tinier footprint, a stairwell does kind of take into the overall square footage. So it's something to consider, but absolutely we can do it. Any others for now? All right, we'll move ahead. So let's jump into a quick case study. So we'll take everything we kind of talked about so far and wrap it into a real life scenario. So in this situation here, the homeowner wanted to add a 2-bedroom ADU for their mother-in-law, who rather than heading into an assisted living facility was hoping to spend more time with grandchildren and live on property. So what we did here, that the homeowner actually leveraged their existing equity into their current home to secure a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, to finance the project. What we did is that they chose to build a turnkey ADU with plenty of space for mom while keeping the ADU separate from the main dwelling to provide privacy and independence. What we did was we added a pathway from the main dwelling, and a fence was installed to provide privacy in two distinct zones on the property. This also created a lot of flexibility as the needs change because maybe mom moves out or whatever, and then it can become a rental property down the road with two separate zones. So they ended up saving a ton of money on their monthly payments if mom had gone into an assisted living, and she got to spend time with her grandkids, making memories. So all in all, a great solution. So let's discuss next more about the ADU options in and around the Madison area. So let's talk laws. So Madison and the surrounding areas are trying to address housing shortages with creative solutions. This is where ADUs can help. They do provide sustainable growth. By using the existing property, we can help address housing shortages without the need for new land development. For these reasons, laws are changing regularly, and ADUs are easier than ever to pursue. We're trying our best to stay on top of these laws as they're changing. Madison and a growing number of municipalities have updated codes to encourage ADUs. So gone are the days of conditional use permits or the need to go before a committee. These changes are happening pretty much, monthly, and it's getting easier and easier. So approvals are getting more straightforward than ever, and meaning the permitting process is getting more streamlined. And this is a big deal because Madison tends to be a little slow on the permitting side of things, and we are seeing that that timelines are shortening with regards to permitting. So for these reasons, it is important to leverage today's favorable zoning while demand is growing. So let's touch on some specifics regarding Madison laws. So ADUs, as we were saying before, are limited to 1,000 square feet maximum size. That's the maximum footprint. This is up from 900 square feet just a few months ago. So this speaks to the changing landscape in the Madison area. And there's also no owner occupancy required, meaning ADUs are permitted even if the owner is not living in the primary dwelling. This is a huge change, and it's a big one for the investor types out there. You can install have built an ADU in the backyard, and you do not have to be living in the primary dwelling. So both can be rental opportunities. So Middleton, Verona, and Waunakee are ADU friendly, but there are some size limits and restrictions, but are generally have pretty friendly ADU rules and policies. Momentum is building, though. That's the key point. ADUs are a little bit more restricted in some areas than others, however. Communities such as Mount Horeb and Sun Prairie are actively rewriting their zoning policies to allow for ADUs. We are keeping close tabs on that, and we will make sure that we update you in our blog and also through future webinars. And so the blog will be a good resource for a ton of ADU related information, including updates to these local laws and zoning restrictions. So stay tuned as we provide more updates there. So now we know more about ADUs and the challenges they solve. And with the legal framework in place, the next step is kind of bringing your ADU vision to life. So let's take a look at what you can expect from the Boundless Tiny Homes ADU process. This will start from the initial planning through construction and on to completion. So the Boundless process. So we handle everything. Our initial from this call, what we can do is we can set up a discovery call. That's our initial main communication, and then we work with you through the site visit, the design and finish selection, and on through to the permitting and build process. So what happens after this webinar? Let's look at what a virtual discovery call might look like. On a virtual discovery call, what we'll do is we'll discuss your needs and your vision, your main goals for adding an ADU. We'll determine your financial comfort zone, a min max. We'd love it to be this price. Please make sure it's not more than this price. A timeline. When would you like to have these keys in hand? Is this something you'd like to get done this year? Is it something that you're looking for next year? And that way we can get a good plan together for when we need to do certain action items. And on the call, we can also bring up your property on our build program to take a look at options for placement. So this is a good opportunity to have some interactive fun where we can look at the property. We can drop one of our ADU models onto the property. We can look at how we might add a driveway if it's needed, or any pathways going back to it, so we can have fun looking at that. And lastly, we'll also cover the construction process overview. This is where we'll cover everything you can expect at each stage along the way, from planning through permitting and on to construction. So by the end of those virtual discovery calls, we'll help you determine if an ADU is the best solution for your property and your specific goals. But before we wrap up today, we'd also like to extend a special offer. Because you're here live with us today, we are offering priority discovery call scheduling and a chance to win 2 tickets to see the Packers versus Chicago Bears at Lambeau Field this upcoming season. All you need to do is simply break ground on your ADU by December 1st, and we'd love to give those tickets away. So that's kind of the presentation here. Again, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties on my end. I'll make sure to do better on your virtual discovery calls. But I'd like to thank you all for joining us on today's webinar, and we appreciate your trust in Boundless Tiny Homes. Have a great evening, everyone. And if you'd like, we can stay on for a few more questions because I want to make sure everyone gets the most benefit out of this session. Devin, are there any other questions that have come in that you'd like to address?
Yeah, we got one. Can you mention options for ADA accessibility?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's important. So we actually can customize the entire home to be ADA accessible. So if that's grab bars, if that's a roll-in shower, we can make sure we can even add things like chair lifts going up the stairs if we've got an ADU over a garage situation. And then obviously we're going to put in pathways. So our standard offering is going to be to put a concrete path going from the primary dwelling back to the ADU. So we will make sure there's something that can be shoveled. And so we have good ADA accessibility. So yes, we'll work with you to make sure that we got excellent ADA accessible property.
Cool. And then let's see. Jordan's asking, are these generally built on site?
Yes, absolutely. They are stick built and they're built on the property. So there's no craning in of any pieces. We're not using any prefabricated. This is going to be built just like the home, most homes that folks live in the area. Pour a foundation. We can do a basement, as I said before, pour a foundation, put up the walls, put a roof over the wall, over it, wrap it in siding, and then build it just like a traditional home. Great question.
Let's see. What zones in Madison currently allow ADUs?
Madison does, Middleton does, and there are, we have, kind of some of the other areas around have a little bit more restrictive. The only areas that right now are not allowing any are Sun Prairie and Mount Horeb, but we are seeing a lot of changes in that regard. And then obviously, if you're outside of the main areas around Madison, and you have kind of a larger property, we sometimes ADUs don't have to necessarily be classified as an ADU, and there's a lot more flexibility there for outbuildings and things like that. So we'll just take those on a case by case basis. But for the most part, the most friendly for ADUs right now is definitely Madison and Middleton.
Cool. And then Stacy's asking, how many can you put on one property?
Well, an ADU is technically an accessory to the primary dwelling. So right now it's for the most part one unit. However, if you're wanting to do something like a two-story, two unit ADU, we could look at that. But as far as the structure is concerned, currently it is the one accessory to the primary dwelling.
And I'll just add too, the primary can be a multifamily property too. So I think it's
Absolutely.
up in Madison in particular, up to 8 units, and then you can add a single ADU to that property. So
Yeah, thanks for that, Devin. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
just looking through here. Can you touch on the differences between a duplex and an ADU?
Well, it's kind of the zoning situation. I think they're very similar, but what we get into is a multifamily residential situation. So an ADU is for a single renter, whereas a duplex is for multiple families.
Cool. And then Beverly is asking it's all zones in Madison's are allowed.
Yes,
That's the
the
question.
only thing we have to do is we have to look at any HOAs. So if there's some covenants and if you have an HOA, there may be some covenants that might be somewhat restrictive, but you know, those are some things that we can kind of maneuver on a case by case basis.
Here's a good one. Someone is asking, is the plumbing and electricity from the original home used in the ADU?
Yeah, so what we typically do is we are going to dovetail into your existing electrical and plumbing. And those costs, I'll just put it out there, typically around $5,000 per utility. So we need to pull water from the home, we need to pull sewer from the home, and then electrical. So sewer, so we can look for the stack in the basement. We can put a Y joint in there, and we can actually run sewer into the primary dwelling. We can pull water, and then we can pull electrical, and everything can be metered separately as well. So whether we're pulling the electrical and the water from the existing primary dwelling, or we're pulling from new lines from the street, It can be metered separately. Um, but that's a great question. There is an additional cost to run a new sewer lateral to the street if we're gonna do that because we have to cut into the actual street. So that typically runs a little higher than that $5,000 to tap into the existing home.
Yeah, and generally that 5,000 is a good like kind of contingency. It's often less than that, but we like to kind of come out with
Yeah.
that as a budget to account for. So just to keep
Yeah.
you make sure that it's we're not coming in your expectations are proper for what that could cost. So
Yeah, we always like to tell our clients it figure for $5,000 per utility, and we typically come in under that. And when we're going to get those pricing for you, what we'll do is we'll actually get those prices from like MG&E and a plumber, and we'll pass those directly along to you. We do not put them under our kind of umbrella as far as pricing is concerned, but we will actually facilitate you getting those prices.
Bonita is asking about prefab options and how those may compare.
Yeah, so prefab, there there's no real bad option. We do not obviously do prefab, but this is going to be stick built, just like a traditional home would be. Obviously, prefab might be coming in a little under what we might be as far as a cost perspective. However, we're the main comparison there is obviously just the build quality. When you we're our builds are of the highest quality as far as construction and craftsmanship is concerned. So I can't really speak to a specific style or type of prefab, but obviously, um, prefabs come with it, some unknowns as far as the build quality and its ability to pass certain inspections and things like that. We build because we understand how the inspection process works here in Madison and the surrounding areas. We understand how difficult it can be to pass inspection, and there are some concerns potentially with, which depending on which prefab model you get, its ability to pass some of those inspections. But obviously there's a cost difference potentially with prefab, but obviously we stand on the quality of what we're doing as far as the stick built construction.
Well, and one thing too, just to touch on with the prefab stuff, like, I'm getting ads all the time from different companies, like national companies that like ship them in. And every time I've seen one of those ads, they're only talking about the kits. So it's just materials and it's not assembling the kits. It's not the foundation, it's not getting utilities to it, it's not the site work to prep the lot. All those things are big expenses that are not accounted for in those prices. So it's just something to consider too. When you're seeing numbers online, which, I'm seeing ads like that all the time, just make sure to look into what's actually included in that pricing because we definitely want to make sure that we're all encompassing in our pricing, and that's including, site work, foundation, permitting, everything between. So,
Yep. Good point. Good point. I've personally seen a number of different kits and prefab options that they advertise for an under $100,000 option, but like you said, it has none of the other stuff included in it. There's a ton of hidden costs, and the costs do tend to rise on things like that.
yeah, and there's also major quality concerns with a lot of those too. You never know what you're getting. So, there's one question here. Sorry, I lost it here. Oh, the park impact fee. Can you touch on that, Jed?
Yeah, so Madison does currently have what's called a park impact fee of $4,800. That's that is a cost that we'd like to see go away. We have had some conversations with the city of Madison, and there may be some light at the end of that tunnel as far as potentially having that um, be be done away with. Middleton did just come around and they initially had the park impact fee, but Middleton does not have that anymore. They've very recently made that change, and we're very grateful that they did. It adds an added expense that I think is relatively unfair when you look at the square footage of one of these units and the fact that it, you know, how the impact that it can actually have on a park is negligible. So, but there is still a park impact fee in the city of Madison.
Can you just touch on slope? How things are built on a slope if there's a steep lot in Madison? We have a couple of those going on right now, actually, but
Yeah, so obviously we like to try and find, that does add cost to build on a slope. We have to do more land management, more cut and fill, things like that. So, we try and place the units in an area where it's a good blend between, the most ideal space and or spot on the property and cost considerations. Now, if cost is no issue, obviously we can do that. We can do that cutting and filling, obviously, to make sure if we need to do a retaining wall, we can do that. I know there might be a prospective customer on the line here today that has a large retaining wall that would need to be installed in the back in order to put a unit in their backyard. So we can absolutely do that. We can facilitate doing the cutting and filling and installing, and building one of these homes on a slope. But sometimes, sometimes the cost benefit analysis isn't there. So we just walk through that, and we kind of, as we go through the process and as we go through the pre-construction process, we will take a look at that slope, get some pricing for that, and then, if we feel like that's a little too high or we don't want to do that, we can obviously move the ADU around on the property a little bit if we have the space to do so.
Stacy's asking about Cottage Grove and McFarland for ADUs.
Cottage Grove and they're a little bit more restrictive. I have not heard that they do not allow. Devin, do you happen to know if what those restrictions are in those areas?
Yeah, I know Cottage Grove does not right now, but we're keeping tabs of it at like live. So I'll drop them a link here. You can keep track of this on our website. We have a good page for this where we have every municipality, or we're adding more and more, every week that, and then the current state of things in their municipalities. So it's our website slash, so it's boundlesstinyhomes.com/zoning dash regulations, and that's a live page that we're continually updating. So
Yeah, things
I think
are
we touched
changing
on this
rapidly in that
earlier.
regard.
Yeah, we touched on this in the deck too, but like Mount Horeb is working on, they're redoing their zoning right now to allow for it. So it's actively changing. Every month there's a new loosening in a municipality's zoning. So there's definitely momentum building for sure.
Absolutely. And just, something that we didn't really touch on in here, when you look at our website, obviously we have our traditional designs. We absolutely can do custom. So don't get hung up on maybe if you see a design that you kind of like, but maybe you wish it were a little different. We are happy to do a custom ADU for you that meets your needs and your vision.
Yeah, so someone is mentioning the impact fee. I think they originally said it's at 7,000, but that's um, for a single family house at $7,000, but ADUs fall into the multifamily rate. So that's $4,800 for the Madison Park impact fee. And to be clear, Madison is the only city that requires that. So if you're outside of Madison in an ADU friendly municipality, you don't have to worry about that. So just checking here. Any more questions? Jack, can you touch on matching existing house colors and whatnot?
Yeah, absolutely. We throughout the design and finish selection process, we absolutely we can either match your existing home, we can do it complementary to the existing home. We can obviously our standard offering is vinyl siding. However, if we'd like to do some modifications to that. Obviously, there might be some cost differences and things like that, but we can absolutely look at what your current home currently has. If that those are materials we can still get, we can absolutely get those and match the existing house. Or if those materials are no longer available or the exact color is no longer available, we can get creative and we can do some colors and some finishes that might complement the existing primary dwelling.
Can you talk about garages and ADUs? I think you mentioned the combined two-story units with a garage below it, but can we build a garage and an ADU like separate buildings in Madison?
Yeah, absolutely. If you, you know, we for a number of customers, we've built the ADU, and then maybe there's an existing garage in that space, and then we want to build a garage behind it, or we build a garage in front of it, or to the side of it. Absolutely, we can build a garage and an ADU. That is absolutely no problem. And we also have the opportunity to do our garage ADU units with the garage below and the ADU living space above it. Sometimes that works really well for times when you have limited space on the lot for the ADU. We just stick the garage unit below and the ADU above it. We can also do fun things like, on a larger ADU garage ADU option, the let's just say you have a G720 unit, that the garage space is pretty deep there, or pretty wide, depending on which way we're going to enter the garage and how we're going to orient the garage door. But there's also space on the first floor in the garage to do its own standalone room. So we could either somehow connect that and maybe put another room that's finished as part of the house above, or we can do maybe a yoga studio, let's say down there, or a workshop or something like that in the lower level. There is enough room on our garage units to split it, have two stalls for parking, and then additional space for, like I said, some other use.
Sharon's asking, how do you prevent flooding? I can touch on this too, Jed, but if you want to give it a
Yeah, I
stab.
mean, so when what during the pre-construction meeting that we'll have at your on your property, we're going to take a look at, and we're going to make a water management plan to make sure that we are not sloping water towards the house, that we're taking into account drainage. So we absolutely will be doing things to make sure that we are not, having water go towards the dwelling. But Devin, if you have additional comments on that, please feel
Yeah, no,
free.
it's a very relevant question. We have a build going on right now, actually. We just put the foundation today. Um, but we had to deal with that because the neighbors next door, their lot was a little bit raised from the lot that they're building on. So we had to accommodate for that so the water coming from the neighbor's lot doesn't slope right into the foundation, right under the foundation of the house. So we did in that situation, like Jed mentioned this too, but every lot is unique, so we have to, approach it in a custom way every time. But in this situation, we were about 6 feet off the lot line, and so we had a little bit of room to work with. So we went a little bit higher with the foundation, and then kind of sloped the existing grade up to the unit. And then we have what's called a swale on the lot side. So along the lot line, we actually have it so it's a little bit of a kind of like a divot in there so the water can come in there and slope away from the house. And the city of Madison always wants us to slope pitch water toward the street. So we kind of have it pitched that way too. So there's different customizations or ways to approach it, but that is definitely top of mind for sure. So we always make sure that it's going to be a safe solution regarding water. So
And we'll do smart things like making sure the downspouts are on the correct side of the property and things like that to make sure that water's going away from the house.
okay, here's one. Does a slab require excavating down to the frost line?
Yeah, so we're going to install a frost wall. So we're going down, you know, roughly
4 feet?
5 feet.
Yeah.
Um, and then putting in the concrete border, the wall, and then we're going to backfill that. So to make sure that we're getting down below that frost line. So yes.
All right, here's two more we'll hit and then we'll call it, I think, but there's a couple good ones here. So, one is regarding utilities. Can the ADU be split off from the house?
Yes. So we can set it up two different ways. So I kind of touched on this earlier, but I may not have
And
explained
this is
it.
specifically regarding electrical and like the utility portion as far as like metering. Sorry if I didn't clarify that.
Yeah, so it's no matter what we do, if we're gonna pull, we can if it makes most sense, if we got an electrical line in the backyard or something like that, we can pull directly from there and then put its own meter on the house, or we can pull from the primary dwelling, the existing home on the property, and pull the power, and then we can meter it there. So either way, there's two options at our disposal. We can do whichever one is most economical, but it can be metered separately. And then we can do things with, like I was saying, the other utilities to make it a little bit easier potentially for a lot split down the road. There are some lots, depending on the size of your lot in different areas of Madison, it's kind of convoluted. But let's say there's certain areas of Madison that require, a 10,000 square feet per lot in order to split it. So if you have a 20,000 square foot lot and happen to live in an area, let's say for Midville, along Midville in there, near Hilldale, that area allows for, if you have 20,000 square feet on lot, you can split it into two. So what we could do is we could run a new sewer lateral to the street. We could meter everything separately. It could be used as an in-law suite or something like that, or for an aging parent. And then down the road, that entire unit could be split off and sold independently from the main dwelling. Our hope is that Madison will start relaxing more and more the restrictions on that particular part, how large that lot needs to be in order to split it off. Because if we can get that scenario going on, obviously, it offers up a ton of opportunities, to really recoup a ton of money on the build cost of these things. Because if you could split it off and sell it independently, obviously everyone knows the housing prices in the Madison area and what that could mean. You said you had another one in that.
Oh, and was just on the distance from the lot line. How does that work?
Yeah, so there's an easement. Typically it's around 5 feet. In some areas it may be as little as 3 feet, but typically it's 5 feet from the property line. There are certain areas like in Middleton, uh, there are some height restrictions that we need to look at. And then the height restrictions are in relation to the distance from the lot line. So we can, as we get into a specific project, we can look at, okay, well, how do we fit this in? Is there a height restriction in place in this particular area? How far from the lot line does it need to be in order to fit? Um, but typically, a lot of our units are going to be shorter than that minimum height restriction, but we do need to be paying attention to that as it pertains to lot lines and how far we are from the lot line.